Hi, welcome everybody to today's webinar, Insurance Marketers Playbook for Call Conversions, Digital Marketing Strategies to Drive Calls and Customers. My name is Blair Symes. I'm the Director of Content Marketing here at Dialogue Tech. Before we begin, I wanted to go over a couple of quick housekeeping items. First, if you're interested in tweeting about the webinar, please use the hashtag Insurance Call Playbook. You'll see it at the top and at the bottom of your screens for each slide. If you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to enter them into the chat box on the bottom left of your screen. We'll try to answer as many questions as we can at the end with the time that we have left. Also, I get this question a lot, but at the end of the webinar, within a couple hours, I will email each of you a link to the recording of the webinar so you can watch it again or share it if you want. And if you're really interested in a copy of the deck itself, just reply that email to me and I can send you a PDF of the deck. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Blair, Director of Content Marketing here at Dialogue Tech. If you're not familiar with Dialogue Tech, we're the leading call attribution platform for insurance marketers, the digital agencies they work with, and really any industry at this point. Joining me is my special guest, Matt Forsey, who's the Vice President of Enterprise Sales here at Dialogue Tech. We've got a pretty full deck for you today. Overall, we're going to be starting off with some important studies in insurance marketing that show the importance of call conversions. Then I'm going to go and talk some of the major digital channels that insurance marketers are using to drive calls and show you some examples and best practices for that. We're going to come back and talk a little bit about the importance of call attribution to get credit and get analytics around the calls you're generating from your marketing. And throughout, we're going to be talking some real-world examples and case studies from not just Dialogue Tech clients, but also some of the top insurance marketers in the field. So with that, I'm going to bring Matt in, and he will begin talking about some of the statistics we're seeing around call conversions in insurance marketing. Matt?
Thanks, Blair. So to start with today, we can all probably agree that smartphones have changed the way consumers engage with digital ads within the insurance market. Instead of filling out web forms on landing pages, your potential customers now prefer to pick up the phone and call. What this means to you as a digital marketer within the insurance space is that if you only measure web form conversions and ignore phone calls, your conversion rates could be off by 50% or more. And you could potentially be allocating the wrong budgets to the wrong campaigns. Recent research from J.D. Powers confirms this assumption. No surprise here. The consumer, for the most part, is conducting a lot of their research around insurance products online. But only about a quarter of those consumers actually end up purchasing a policy via an insurer's website, is what the research is showing. In fact, a majority of customers are much more comfortable calling in and talking with an agent who can provide immediate answers and a high-touch customer experience. So 74% of insurance shoppers research their purchases online, 50% obtain a quote from an insurance provider's website, but only 25% actually purchase a policy online. Everyone else is more apt to call a local agent or the insurer's call center. So you're saying to yourself, great, Dialogue Tech found one data set that supports their message. Actually, there's a lot more out there. So research from ComScore, for instance, reveals that while most consumers shop for insurance online, they don't actually convert into customers via a website. In fact, 81% of consumers who didn't convert on the website wound up buying an insurance product offline. And of that group, 74% of consumers cite the desire to speak to a person as the main reason that they didn't purchase a policy on the website. What we can infer from that is consumers not only want the immediacy of calling an agent, but also the intimacy of that experience. In fact, another study from XAD shows us that over 60% of insurance buyers say that talking with a live agent was the most influential experience they had throughout their customer journey. As does this study from Google. In fact, the Google data shows us that at least half of in-market insurance shoppers very much want to be able to call an agent, both while they're researching different options and when it comes time to buy a policy. And one more piece here. Recent data from Nielsen provides some further insight into the mobile shopper's journey in particular, where almost half of consumers convert by calling a local agent or connecting with an insurer's call center. So knowing what we now know about insurance consumer shopping behavior, how do we optimize our ad strategies to ensure we're supporting consumers' desired research and purchasing journeys? I'm going to bring Blair back to discuss some different strategies here.
So thanks, Matt. So now that we've seen how important call conversions are to the ROI of your marketing, I wanted to go over some of the major channels and show examples of how insurance marketers are really using these channels to drive calls. So let's start with Facebook. Facebook's such a great channel for digital marketers to drive calls in general because it's such a mobile-first platform. You can see some of the stats on the left. Almost 1 billion people log into Facebook every day on a mobile device, and over half of Facebook users only ever use their smartphones. So they're only ever going to see your advertising if they're as a mobile ad on their smartphones. And that's why over 80% of Facebook ads are actually mobile. And you can see the results on the right. Studies show that this year there'll be over 12 billion call conversions from Facebook and social media ads just in the US. And that number, amazingly enough, is supposed to triple by 2019 to 36 billion calls from Facebook and social media advertising. So calls and Facebook are very much intertwined. So how can you go about driving calls from your Facebook ads? So Facebook advertising gives you a wide variety of objectives for your campaigns. If you're looking to drive calls, the biggest one you should try is making sure that you first drive somebody to your mobile optimized website and then get them to engage with and click on your phone number or click to call button. So how do you do that? Well, here's some examples. One major way to do that, to get somebody to stop scrolling through their news feed and engage with your Facebook ad, is to give them an incentive to do that. So here are some examples from major insurers. We're talking about cost is one of the biggest things. So giving them some kind of discount or switch and save message is extremely popular in the insurance agency. And then you can use different call to action buttons like sign up or learn more or contact us and send them directly to a mobile optimized page where there's a prominent click to call number or phone number front and center. So studies show that in insurance shopping, location really does matter. So people who are researching insurance purchases on their smartphones, for example, 44% of those people expect their insurance agent to be within 5 miles of where they live. So Facebook gives you some targeting options to take advantage of those people. You can geo-target your ads so they only show the people who live in a certain area that you define. So as you can see on the left, Facebook says you can pick people who live in an area, who recently traveled to an area, but you want the people, you want the people who live there because people are going to try to buy from an agent that's located close to where they live. So when you do that, you should think about what's called hyper-localizing your advertising. So what that means is pick an exact agent, like the State Farm example, and have them, anyone who clicks on that ad, go directly to that agent's page with a local phone number, a local address to incentivize a phone call. You can also target people on Facebook based on life events. So, for example, whether the person you're trying to target has just had a new baby, or they graduated from college, or they got engaged or married, or they just bought a new home. All of these life events are triggers for different types of insurance purchases. And you can actually pick those people in your Facebook ad targeting and show specific messages to take advantage of what's happening in their lives. I like the one in the upper right from Liberty Mutual because they're actually going after a specific university graduation. So you can know that somebody just graduated from college. They list the college they're going to on Facebook. You can actually have a message really personalized to that experience to get them to jump on board and start a new policy with you. You can also target people based on interests and behaviors. So insurance specifically, you can pick people who are likely to respond to an insurance offer. So on the left, you can see this is for auto insurance specifically, but Facebook actually gives you a ton of people who they believe, based on behavior, are likely to respond to a specific insurance type offer. If people who like insurance or have visited insurance-related pages, you can also target those people specifically to really narrow down and fine-tune your message and the target you're going after. And you can even try to target competitors. So I just picked Aflac randomly here. You can see people who have an interest or like Aflac pages. Perhaps that signifies they're an Aflac customer. If you're trying to have a switch campaign, this is something you can do to get someone to engage with your ad through a promotion for a switch campaign. Visit your specific landing page and call your agent or call center. Targeting tips. Facebook's huge on targeting. I wanted to at least touch a few other ones. So retargeting is enormous. If somebody visits your website and doesn't make a purchase, you can retarget them with ads. It shows that they're probably a more qualified person to view your ads. But you can also use calls as a trigger. So if somebody visits your site and calls you or doesn't call you, perhaps you can show specific messages to those people to get them to re-engage with you and call. Lookalike audiences. So if you found an audience that works for you, you can have Facebook find similar people with similar traits to expand your reach. So once you've fine-tuned that persona or targeting that works, see if Facebook can expand that to really drive more conversions. And then, of course, custom audiences. So if you're generating, people are requesting a quote online, filling out forms online, you can actually upload those people's email addresses into Facebook and show them specific messages to get them to come back and finish their quote, give you a call, and purchase a policy. So I'm going to show two other ad formats before we move off of Facebook. The first here is the carousel format. If you're on Facebook, you're probably familiar with it. It's the ability, it doesn't just show a single image, it can show multiple images. This is actually one I was shown this morning from Liberty Mutual, which very timely, it's all about the Olympics, but they actually show videos. Each of those little squares is its own video with a unique call to action to get people to go to the Liberty Mutual website, which has the Olympic logo prominently, and ask people to give them a call. So Facebook says that these carousel ads, the cost per conversion is somewhere between 30 to 50% less than single image ads, so it's certainly something that's worth trying if you're trying to generate policies. The last one is the Call Now button. So obviously Matt and I would be remiss if we didn't at least mention that Facebook does offer a Call Now button in their local awareness ads. So if you're trying to drive calls to a local agent, perhaps having a Call Now button and a specific offer directly within the Facebook ad will generate a call to that agent to get them to purchase a new policy. So let's move on to display advertising and some tips for how display can drive visitors, calls, and policies. So why display is important. 60% of people are engaging with digital media on their smartphones and mobile devices, and that's why 67% of digital ad spending now is specifically to mobile. So when we're talking about display advertising, smartphones and mobile devices are the predominant device where these ads are showing up now. And you can see the results on calls to the right. 28 billion calls to U.S. businesses are expected from display ads alone this year. So a tremendous amount of calls are being generated from display. So what are some strategies to use? Well, the first one would be to include a phone number in your display ads. So as part of your call to action, you can have a phone number in the ad. This one is localized to me because I live in the area code there, and basically have an offer that gets somebody to engage with your ad. So much like Facebook, but I think even more relevantly on display ads, somebody who sees your display ad is probably in an app or reading an article on a website. They're not looking actively to purchase insurance. But if you've targeted them right and you have the right incentive, you can get them to click on that ad and begin to convert on your mobile website. So add some kind of incentive like a cost savings as MetLife did in this ad, and make sure when they go to your landing page that phone number call to action is front and center. Retargeting, just like Facebook, is also big in display. If somebody visits the Liberty Mutual website here and begins a quote but doesn't finish it, Liberty Mutual can retarget you on your devices as you browse the internet, and there's a specific call to action here of finish my quote. So they know that you've started a quote and they're asking you to come back and finish and start saving. And you can send them then to the Liberty Mutual page where Call Now is a major call to action there. So again, when people come to your site and start filling out a quote, obviously that shows they're probably a very high value lead. You definitely want to get your message front and center, so display ad and retargeting is one way to do that. I would also recommend hyper-localizing your targeting if you've got local agents or branches. So for example, here are some State Farm State Farm ads where they actually show messages from those agents. So they're all very similar, but they hyper-localize them with the local address and phone numbers of the people. So, local phone numbers we've seen at Dialog Tech throughout our customer base drive 3 times the calls as toll-free numbers when people are looking for a local business. So if you're sending calls to a local agent, use those local phone numbers. I wanted to touch just briefly on email. So again, we're seeing this where 66% of emails are actually now being opened on smartphones and mobile devices. So as people read and engage with your emails on their smartphones, as you're trying to get people who you're trying to nurture, as an email nurturing campaign or advertising campaign, be sure to include that phone number as a clickable call to action within the email. They're on their smartphones. The email is basically working as a landing page. Go ahead and have that phone number so they can trigger an immediate call to your local agent or to your call center. And also, if somebody clicks through, obviously have that phone number front and center to the landing page they go to, so they can engage with you by making a phone call. I want to end my my digital channel, best practices by search. So search is obviously probably the most important in terms of driving conversions. The data, of course, backs this up. Searches has gone mobile. Google has said that over half of all searches now take place on smartphones and mobile devices, and 63% of search ad spend is now targeting mobile devices. So this is not news to anyone who's actively engaged in search advertising, but what you might not realize is that the huge numbers of phone calls that are being generated by search advertising, either right from the search ad or from the visit to the landing page. You can see here, 40 billion calls to U.S. businesses from search ads are expected this year, 61 billion calls to U.S. businesses in 2019 for search ads. It's a staggering number. Search ads is the behemoth for driving calls. So let's go through a couple tips on how you go ahead to do that. The first tip is actually to use Facebook and display ads. So, even though somebody might not convert from your display ad or your Facebook ad, just being exposed to your brand and your message makes them more likely to search for you and then convert through search. Study after study shows that people who see your brand will run a branded search for you and then are more likely to convert on that search ad when they do. So use other digital channels to drive search conversions. People are probably going to see your search ads on their smartphones, so be aware of that and optimize the language in your search ads for that smartphone experience. So for example, on the left-hand side, make sure that when you're sending somebody to a landing page, it's mobile optimized, it's smartphone optimized, it's got those call now buttons front and center. But also, so you can tweak your ad copy to make sure you're speaking in the language of mobile. So for example, Geico here says free quote on your phone. State Farm says savings in the palm of your hand, tap here to save. It speaks to the customer's experience as they're seeing your ads on their smartphones. Of course, use call extensions to drive calls and new policies. Call extensions are huge in search ads. So, Google has a really popular study that shows that over 70% of mobile searchers will use that call button to engage with the business. And even if they don't, people who see a call extension in an ad are 8% more likely to click on that ad than a non-call extension ad. So even if they don't call you directly from the search ad, they're more likely to visit your landing page and then call. And you can see how Google's got some stats specifically for the insurance vertical, where it says that consumers looking for insurance are almost 3 times as likely to call from a search ad than in other verticals. So it's really huge in insurance. If you're not using call extensions, you absolutely need to be. You can also optimize the language and the ads to try to drive that engagement. So, studies show that people who see advertising on smartphones when they're looking for insurance, these are the top 3 reasons why they will click on an ad. The first is price and promotion. So you can see how the language in these advertising, the Geico, you could save over $500, big savings. So having that cost-saving message is key. Also, local relevance is tied to the second most important thing people are looking for. So here's an ad from State Farm, but it's for that exact agent, and it's got a local phone number. Also, you can see on the right the ad for American Family. They've got, find an agent near you as one of the calls to action in the site links. They've also enabled Google My Business so that all of their locations near where I searched, I'm in Chicago, show up and they show the proximity to me, and with call buttons there for each of those locations. So that's a great way to optimize for local relevance. And lastly, people want ads from brands they know. So having your brand name in the ad language at the top, having things that reinforce your advertiser rating or your history, like American Family's got over 80 years of experience up there. Geico has the same thing, 75 years of savings, showing that you're an established, well-known brand will help get those conversions. And lastly, I'd be remiss if I didn't say there's also call now ads, which are extremely popular in the insurance agency. Call now ads, if you're not familiar, it's the only conversion path from calls, from the search result itself is a call. So you can't visit the landing page. Calls are the only conversion. And if you're looking to use call now ads or test them for how they're going to work, bid based on the value of a call. Since call is the only conversion, make sure that the ad spend you're bidding on is worth what a call is to your business. Also bid on keywords that generate calls. So if you found that certain keywords that you've been bidding on, people are more likely to visit your landing page and request more information, that might not be the right keywords to use for a call-only ad. You can use ads to incentivize a call. So for here, you've got the as low as $35 a month, but you've also got specific language like talk to the car insurance specialist or buy instantly. It's a way to show that when you call, someone will be there to take your call. And only run ads during business hours. So for many, if you've got a call center, this might not be an issue, but if you've got local branches where you're running ads and someone's not there only there from 9 to 5, for example, don't run ads to drive calls to a local branch when they're not going to be there to take the call. So lastly, I wanted to go over a couple of the targeting options. So they're very similar to what Facebook offers. So, RLSA is the retargeting for Google. So it's the ability to show specific ads, to bid on specific keywords, and bid specific amounts for people who have previously visited your site and either called or didn't call. Perhaps there are some broad keywords that you wouldn't want to bid on because not every lead that would search for that is a good lead for your business. But if someone searches for that who has previously visited your site, perhaps that indicates they are a good lead and you want to show those ads for those keywords to those people. You can do that. Customer match, Google did this to keep up with Facebook. Basically, you can upload email addresses into Google and then show specific ads or run specific keywords or bidding strategies for people who have previously visited your website and filled out a form, for example. And then, of course, geo-targeting. When you're looking to show maybe call now ads to people within a certain proximity to an agent, or if you're looking to show specific ads for certain regions, make sure geo-targeting is a big way to do that. So we've talked about the importance of calls and how to drive them. Now I'm going to hand it back to Matt to talk about why it's so important to attribute those call conversions. Matt?
So at this point, what you know now from the research that we explored earlier is that as an insurance marketer, you're likely not getting the credit for a good portion of the new policies you're driving for your company. You know that by only measuring web form conversions, your key conversion metrics like your CPL, your cost per lead, and your ROI, your return on investment or your return on ad spend, are likely pretty inaccurate. And accepting this, you know that you're possibly losing potential customers by allocating budget to underperforming channels as well as underperforming campaigns, and ultimately that you can't really measure the true ROI of your marketing spend and prove to your exec team how you're driving new policies and impacting revenue for the organization. And because it's simple math, guys, right? If your monthly ad budget, in this example is $1.15 million, from which you attribute only web form leads, 4,428 of them in this case, your cost per lead, your CPL, your key performance metric that you're measuring your business on, is $260. Unfortunately, although those web form leads are generating almost $400,000 in new revenue, your ROI, your return on investment against that $1 million plus ad budget is going to be a negative number, negative $750 in this case. But if you're able to attribute all of the leads that your ad investment's generating by including all of the phone leads as well, obviously your ratios improve dramatically. Not only do you get a true CPL of $108 in this case, but the ROI from this campaign goes from what's really a number you might want to hide in the closet to one that's going to elevate you to digital marketing rock star status.
And I think what's really interesting here is if you're a marketer, if you just look at forms and not calls, you might look at that top campaign and start to panic and think, I need to change. I need to allocate this budget to something else. But in reality, this is a profitable campaign that's doing, what it's supposed to be doing. So you might actually switch off a very high-performing campaign for one that's not as good if you're not aware of the call conversion aspect.
Yeah, good point. So call attribution software like we're talking about today is going to enable you to deliver that true CPL and ROI from all of your efforts across channels and devices, and also provides a wealth of data for your organization. So understanding what money we're spending that's driving phone calls, right? Understanding who's calling, what's their intent, and understanding, did our marketing drive a good call, right? Was this a lead or was this something else? And what do we do with all this new data? So as marketers, we can do a number of things, right? We can optimize our spend and our time to drive good calls. So those are calls that result in new policies and new revenue for our organization. We can optimize to eliminate spend that drives bad calls as well, right? So callers looking for information that they should have been able to find on your website, like hours of operation of a branch office.
So I think what's interesting here, it's not just optimizing for, the marketing source that's driving the good call, but you can also optimize for days of the week or times of the day or geographic location. So for example, in a search ad campaign, if you know that, at lunchtime in Chicago, certain keywords are likely to generate a call, maybe you want to bid more on those specific keywords or at that specific time of day for that specific location. And that's what you can get if you have all the analytics and attribution data behind the call.
And that data then can be pushed into the tools that you use every day to manage your campaigns in the first place and empower those platforms with call conversion data. So tools like analytics tools from Adobe and Google, bid management systems from Marin or Kenshu or Ignition One, even CRM systems like Salesforce, easy to plug in this data there. As well as pass on into those systems data on new callers, new opportunities to be able to better optimize the top of your funnel.
So I like this use case and this tip because, as an insurance provider, maybe a call from an existing customer, someone who's got a history of calling you, they're already a customer, maybe they're calling to report a claim or something and they just run a search to find your phone number and they convert on your search ad. But you don't want to necessarily optimize on that data. So maybe a campaign that's driving new calls is a much better indication of a profitable campaign for driving new business. So you can only pass data on new callers to those platforms you're using to measure and optimize those campaigns.
So when implemented, doing those two things, a leading global insurance provider that's working with Dialog Tech today has quickly increased their leads, in their case by 14% within a very short period of time after launching this program, and also improved the impact of their digital marketing campaigns and ultimately the overall quality of their new leads as well. And what they're looking at there is the correlation between the amount of time an agent is on the phone with a new customer. The longer calls typically in the insurance space indicate a higher quality lead. Some other strategies and tips to look at. So leveraging new data on who that caller is, and what marketing source and keywords drove that call. Insurance companies can easily route and prioritize these leads according to the needs and sales value of each individual lead coming in, and help the agent get a better understanding of the intent of the consumer before they even pick up the phone. So
what I like about this is, don't treat every caller the same. So as marketers, sometimes we run these campaigns and we just accept the fact that when a call happens, that's the end of it. But you don't have to necessarily. You can have control over prioritizing calls. So for example, if a call comes in from a display ad campaign, perhaps that's not as valuable as someone who calls directly from a search keyword that indicates they're ready to make a purchase. So you can actually prioritize where those calls are routed and actually, how they line up in the call queue. So get those people who are calling specifically from a search keyword that indicates intent. Prioritize those over other calls, as well as when you're sending calls from a national campaign to local agents, for example, or to call centers, you can actually tell them the marketing source, the person's phone number, who they are, as well as their location at the time of the call, so they can use that to really have a better conversation. So before they pick up the phone, they know that this is someone calling from downtown Dallas who has run a search for cheapest auto insurance, for example. So now you know what these persons are calling for, and you can better have a better, more profitable conversation because of it.
And then post-call, so when the agent hangs up the phone, the analysis that can be done after that call will help the agent and the marketing team glean a variety of insights from the call itself, right? Such as, what words did the caller use that are buying signals for us? Did the agent answering the phone follow prescribed marketing scripts for local and national campaigns, right? Are those local and national promotions being offered on the call, and are they having an impact on sales? And ultimately trying to get to the root of why did this new customer convert? So grabbing some of the qualitative analysis along with the quantitative data that we're able to capture. So the data to understand what happened on that call can come from a few different tactics here, and we'll take a look at those briefly. So we know that, as I mentioned earlier, in the insurance market, a longer call is a pretty good indicator of the strong sales lead. So we track and report on call duration, right? All these data can also be integrated, as I mentioned earlier, with your CRM tools like a Salesforce.com or Microsoft Dynamics to track new leads through the sales funnel, to better understand which marketing programs are driving revenue, as well as understand the lifetime value of that lead. And calls can also be digitally transcribed, so we can better understand the activities that are driving those good phone calls, the ones that convert into a new policy, as well as activities that are driving bad phone calls, ones that don't convert or are looking for information that could have been found through other sources like our website. And we don't want to pay for a very expensive insurance click if the consumer is simply looking to understand our hours of operation. We take that a step further by applying the latest in machine learning technology to those conversations. So you can quickly analyze and categorize calls based on what's important to you as a marketer, also as an agent. So things like leads that converted, right? Leads that are in market but didn't convert, or simply getting a handle on the money you're spending that's driving those non-sales calls that we discussed earlier.
So, what Matt's covering now, I mean, this is, I think of it as some truly space-age stuff, but this is what marketers are actually doing to get real and valuable intelligence and insight around the calls they're generating. So as a marketer, especially in insurance, you're driving all these calls, either the call center or the local agents. You don't necessarily have much insight into what's happening on those calls. Now, are you going to listen to all the calls if you're recording them or read transcriptions? I mean, no one has time to listen to hundreds of thousands of calls a month or a year. So you can use machine learning to actually say, okay, I want to learn for this specific location, for example, or across all of my branches, which ads that I'm running are driving the best, highest quality calls. You can do that. You tell the machine what you want to learn from the calls, and it'll go find all those signals that prove what it is that you see and show you in a digestible way the answer to your question. So it's really, machine learning to some marketers might be new, but this is actually happening, and some of the biggest insurance agencies are actually looking into using this.
Yeah, and then you can segment calls really easily, run searches for words that are spoken during any call. So looking for things like whether it's looking for auto versus life versus supplemental, looking for terms like the word term for that matter, or new policy, better understanding some of that additional quantitative data like the time of day, the geography that caller is coming from, all to get an idea of who that audience is and understanding keywords to be able to remarket to them.
So, this is the idea that you've got all these calls recorded and transcribed. If you wanted to, you can segment them into, either certain channels or times of day, caller geography, whatever segment you want to do, and then you can run keyword searches. Let's think of it like a Google search, where you're running a search for important words that you want to see every single call where that shows up. And then you can actually see the results, and you can drill into the call and see who said it, where in the conversation it was said, to get some really valuable data without having to waste time listening to calls, which is just impossible for insurance marketers to do. So I wanted to end with a couple other examples, of data that we're seeing on our platform. Some of the insights you have around calls that we didn't cover really as marketers. Here's just two examples, but one of the largest global insurance providers, when they drill into their call data, if you're, say, in charge of paid search for this insurance provider, you can see that paid search is driving 11% of paid search visitors who go to the website are calling. And you can compare that to, say, 3% of organic searches. So you can see that paid search is really doing a great job of driving, almost 4 times the call volume as organic search. So maybe that can help you not only understand the ROI of paid search, but then inform some of the bidding and budgeting that you would do around that, as well as maybe help the web team optimize SEO better to drive more conversions. Maybe you can see this and think that it's not performing as well as it should. The bottom example is even a deeper dive into specific search engines advertising campaigns. So for one large U.S. health provider that works with us, they can see how the growth of calls over the first 5 months of this year. You can see how, well, obviously call volume in Google is bigger, as you would expect, since it gets far more traffic and clicks than Bing does. You can also see that it's growing at a much higher rate. So all of a sudden you can see that Google, whatever you're doing on Google, is working much better than what you're doing on Bing, and perhaps you can make intelligent allocation or message optimization decisions based on all this call data that otherwise you might not have. So, I hope that this was insightful and interesting for you. We've got a minute or two to do a couple quick questions, but I wanted to say that if you're interested in learning more about what we talked about today and some of the technologies that Matt covered, just visit the Dialogue Tech website. You can request a demo or give us a call. We'd be happy to answer any questions for you. If you have any more questions as well, you can please use the chat box now. I see we've got a bunch. I'll try to get to as many as I can, but I know that we're running a little over in terms of time. So let me see. Let me just do a couple quick ones while we have time. So do we have any tips for managing and analyzing calls to local agents? So I think we covered a little bit of this on the webcast today, but if you're an insurance marketer who is spending all this money to drive calls to local agents, we just talked about how the first thing is obviously to understand the quality and volume of the calls you're generating and from what marketing channels you're doing that to prove the value. But it's also analyzing what happens on the call. So being able to use technology to understand the quality of the conversation as well, and honestly to use it to monitor the quality of the sales agent's performance and make sure that you're not spending money to send conversions to an agent who's not answering the phone or doing a bad job of representing, not following the script you're talking about. So I think that covers it. I know we covered a few of these already as well. One more question here. What digital channel drives the most calls? Okay, so obviously paid search is the biggest one. So if you're looking to drive calls immediately, paid search is huge. What I do find interesting, though, as we're seeing on our platform, is that Facebook, while not as high in terms of conversion totals, we are seeing growth in Facebook advertising calls at a higher rate. So I'm not saying Facebook will ever catch up to the search ads in terms of call volume, but in terms of growth in calls, that we're seeing it grow pretty significantly. Any other questions? Let's see. One more here. are there any tips on scoring calls as they come in? That's actually a good question. I know probably many marketers will use an IVR, for example, interactive voice response, to at least do some basic qualification questions to direct people to the right, whether they're calling for claims or calling for sales. That's certainly one way to do it. But as marketers, there are other things you can do. I know customers of ours, we have spam call protection, for example, where we will weed out all the spam calls. So it's one way of eliminating some of those annoying calls from both your call data as well as reaching your sales agent. So we automatically block caller spam. You can also do some routing based on the source of the call. So we talked about this earlier, but what marketing source is driving the call. So then maybe certain keywords, searches for certain keywords are more indicative of a quality conversation, or maybe someone's searching for careers or some information that is not business hours or whatever it is, and you can direct people automatically based on where they searched to the right place at the right time. So I think that's basically. I see a bunch of other questions that are really specific to someone's use case, and we'll definitely reach out to you after the webinar to address them. But I'm happy to send the slide deck if people want to see some of the sources of the data or want to reference some of the tips and best practices that Matt and I talked about. And look in your inbox later today for an email with the call recording, the webinar recording, so you can watch it again if you want. But that's basically all the time we have for today. Thanks again for joining us. I hope it was insightful for you, and feel free to give us a call, visit our website if you're interested in learning more. Thanks.